My guest today is Pakistani-American filmmaker Afia Nathaniel to discuss her Oscar-qualified short, Don't Be Late, Myra. Now, drawing from her own lived experiences and her perspective as a survivor, has transformed trauma into bold cinematic storytelling that confronts patriarchy and sparks vital dialogue about the children's safety in Pakistan and around the world. Now, with her acclaimed debut feature, Dukhtar, Pakistan's official submission to the past 87th Academy Awards, which was groundbreaking work in both Pakistan and Hollywood. But it's her newest short film, the gripping short film, Don't Be Late, Myra, marking a milestone in Afia's Nathaniel's return to telling stories from Pakistan. Now, Don't Be Late, Myra is both a survival thriller and an unflinching commentary on the silence surrounding child harassment and abuse in Pakistan and beyond. So let's welcome Pakistani-American filmmaker Afia Nathaniel and her Oscar-qualified short, Don't Be Late, Myra, to the show. Welcome.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for having me.
Well, I found your film heartbreaking, and I know that it's very personal to you. How were you able to transform your trauma into filmmaking to help others who have lived through the same cultural taboos that you did?
It's never easy to talk about trauma and the question of how do you tell a story that stays true to its authenticity and also its lived experience and what it can say to audiences beyond your own story, right? So this is one of those films that has been living inside me for a long time. And I was only 9 years old when I was first assaulted in the streets of Lahore, where I'm from. And at that age, one is so young, there were no words to describe what had just happened or the experience or just the shame that comes with such an experience. There was no way to talk about it. So for many years, I buried this story inside me and I didn't forget it. I just never had the courage to let it out. And it's only a few years ago when there was a series of very high profile sexual assault cases in Pakistan that I started, thinking about my own experiences and those of my friends, from Lahore, and how we were always so quiet and silent about the issue of abuse growing up. And one of the cases that rocked our nation was a case of a mother who was traveling with her young children in a car at night. And her gas ran out of the car, so her car stopped in the middle of the highway. And a bunch of strangers who were passing by stopped their Jeep. They got out, they dragged the mother out and gang raped her in front of her young children. And this was a shocking incident, not just in terms of the incident itself, but the fact that the conversation in the country was, what was she doing so late at night? And that really triggered me. This whole idea of blaming and shaming the victim, that really became a trigger for me. And Don't Be Late, Myra came pouring out of me very, very quickly. It was bottled up inside for so long and it just flowed out of me. And in a fit of anger, I wrote this because I didn't want to be silent anymore about this issue. And that's how, Myra was forged in that flame of anger.
Well, you pulled off one very powerful film, and I think society as a whole needs to stop blaming the victim.
Mhm.
And but how prevalent is childhood harassment and assault in Pakistan?
I mean, as girls growing up in Pakistan, the story is always different for the girls than for the boys. So I'm from a middle class background in Pakistan, and I was raised by my grandmothers in Lahore. And we could never go out and play as young girls in the streets, because You could be kidnapped, you could be assaulted, and without a male chaperone who will take care of you in the streets, you know. So as girls, we grew up with a lot of fear and a lot of shame around our very existence, around our bodies, you know. And the fact that, you know, we always have to look out and be safe. The fact, I think this is, you know, growing up in Pakistan in some ways is not that different than some other places as well, where you as a girl have to take an extra precaution, you know, when you're walking down the street by yourself, and it's night, and there are many things that you have to think about, you know, including how you're dressed. So you know, this was something that, you know, there were different set of rules for us as girls, and we were supposed to stick to them, and we stuck to them. But you know, every now and then you had to walk the streets alone, and I have based this film on my own experiences and those of my friends who have been harassed so many times while walking down, as a child, as a teenager, as a young woman, even as an older woman. If you're by yourself in the streets of Lahore, you can be assaulted. You know, there is, it's a given, whether it's daylight or night, it doesn't matter, you can be assaulted, so you have to be really careful. So you know, this is one of those things where um, I really wanted to shine a light on this issue, because just the act of going out of your home or coming back from school becomes a major source of trauma for some of the girls, you know.
Well, what is the social standing of women in Pakistan? I mean, because I know that when I think of the plight of women in Afghanistan, they are basically treated as completely invisible with no rights. But what is the social standing of women in Pakistan?
So it depends on your social status. You know, there's a really big divide in terms of freedom and liberty when you're a rich woman or from the elite versus, let's say, if you're a very poor woman or from a lower middle class, and so on. So your idea or your degree of mobility and freedom depends which economic and social bracket you come from. And the most restrictive happens to be middle class. You know, a poor woman has to go out and make her living anyways, so she will be stepping out of the house. That's a given. The rich woman will be in her car, you know, safe from the, you know, from the harassment of everyday working women who have to catch the public transport or the bus or walk down the street to get to their workplace. You know, so the middle class is by far the one that is most stressed when it comes to liberty and the women, um, and you know, how patriarchy treats them, because everybody else can sort of go about their work as they want, but it's really the rules are for the middle class women, and that's where the hard part is. So you know, in that sense, we're very different from Afghanistan. If you go to a part of Lahore that's really upscale, um, and you know, from a well-to-do side of the city, you can see women walking around. But you can go to a completely different part of the city where, you know, the woman has to have a chadar around her shoulders or maybe her head. So even I dress differently in my own city depending what part of the city I will be that day or filming that day, you know. It depends on some unwritten rules of society.
Well, there's something that you show in this film, um, and it's the father. How taboo is that situation in your own country of fathers preying on their own daughters?
I mean, sexual assault is prevalent everywhere, and you know, statistics tell us that it's usually somebody very close to you or somebody you trust. And one in every five girls, and these are statistics from around the world, you know, one in every five girls will be sexually assaulted before she turns 18. And so, you know, these very often we have seen in cases, whether it's Pakistan or elsewhere, that it's people close to you. So, your cousin, your brother, your father, your uncle, the servant in your house, the male servant in the house. These are people that are the closest to you. And things that happen within the four walls often get silenced. That is the more horrendous part, is that abuse is brushed under the carpet so that it stays within the house, within the four walls, whoever the perpetrator is. And that silencing, that shaming, then gets transferred to just the victim. And that is the hard part, which I really want to talk about through this film.
Yes, and you did. Now, let's talk about this film because I noticed that when Myra walked out to the street leaving her school, your camera shot showed that the barbed wire above her head. So that was just a sign of danger that was ahead of her, correct?
Correct, correct. You got it. The subtext of that moment, yes. So the moment she steps out of the four walls or the safe space of her school, she's just missed her bus. And I wanted to capture and frame uh, the outside world in relation to this danger that will encroach upon her slowly but surely. And so when I was scouting this location, I saw the gate. It was a black gate. I didn't paint it, and it was like perfect. And it had this barbed wire on top. So I was like, okay, I'm going to put this camera a little lower on her face as she walks out, and I'm going to frame her with that intent of foreshadowing this journey.
Yeah, and I picked that up because I noticed how you placed the camera just low enough to see her come through the gate, but still allow the audience to see the subtle sign of the barbed wire above her, which was basically giving all of us the signal of what her journey was going to be like heading home.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
so,
you got
yeah,
it.
so
Yeah.
it was perfectly done, and I and I counted. I believe that there were at least 3 to 4 instances in the film in which Myra was harassed. The first one, a man trying to entice her to hitch a ride with him, which his dialogue to her was a bit unsettling,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
in that scene, but she kept looking straight. She not one time did she ever turn to look at him.
Yes. And that body language is ingrained in us as girls. We're taught to not meet the eye of any stranger as you're walking by, lest they make a contact and lest that be seen as an invitation. So the moment you look up, it implies invitation. And so as girls, we were told to always look down and to avoid eye contact with the men, with the strangers, so that they don't get the signal for the invitation. And this rickshaw driver in the scene that you're talking about, this is very, very true to life. You'll see if a girl or a child is walking by somebody on a bicycle or a motorcycle or this rickshaw, they will kind of slow down. Even cars slow down, and they will ask this lonely person walking down, if it's a girl especially, if they need a ride. And I'll share something really interesting with you. Like, we were filming this scene and we were filming another scene where she's walking down by herself. My actress Anaya, she's only 10 years old. And there's this other scene where she's walking on the bridge, and I called cut on that shot, and I went to Anaya to speak with her. It's a really long bridge, and there's traffic coming on, one side of the bridge. And as I'm talking to my actress, we are both standing alone on the bridge. This car slows down. There's 5 men inside it. They stop and they want to ask us if we need a ride. This is a busy bridge. They can see I'm part of a crew. And yet, here we are. these five guys see an opportunity and they're not going to stop. So, this is unfortunately a very big problem in the culture where the harassment continues despite, they're seeing a working woman and a child. They're like, we'll stop, we'll ask. And so the scene with the rickshaw, it's very, very true to how that rickshaw driver would have approached this lonely child walking alone.
Well, why is it in the society in Pakistan that why aren't men taught in the home to respect a woman?
I mean, that's the whole point of this film. Today it's the International Day of the Men, I believe. And I think the the training that needs to happen begins at home in terms of respect, in terms of honor, and that's often left to the fathers, when it comes to the boys. And so my message really is we need men and boys as our allies in this conversation of how do we make our society and our cultures and our homes safer. They are very much part of this dialogue. And in Pakistan, and especially from the part of city that I am from, it's a very deeply conservative part of the country. You can go to another part of the country that may not be that conservative, but Lahore is very Punjabi, very patriarchal, very conservative. And so this idea that there are different rules for the boys versus the girls, it comes down to that. So growing up, we should not be distinguishing different set of rules. We should be advocating for one set of rules which is based on equality and respect you know
Well, yeah, because even when I was growing up, my father was very, very adamant and strict when it comes to how you treat a woman. You
Mhm.
never hit a woman, open the door for the woman, respect them, you don't cross lines, you know, and and there's just other countries and other cultures in the world that just do not heed to that. And even in your film, you even showed the two men on the motorcycle. Of course, there's the ending of the film, but you do show this little ray of light when when Myra's walking by, and it's the gentleman handing her the medicine for her mother, which was really the only true um,
Mhm.
shining light in that moment of the film. So why was that little element added?
I think that's also true to the culture. The Punjabi culture is big, it's loud, it's patriarchal, but there's also kindness and warmth in the culture. So I wanted to show a side of my city that's also very generous. When somebody is sick, and it's your neighbor who's there and knows the family really well for several generations, that person will help the child and not judge her and really be part, like a family member. So the culture has a lot of contradictions, and that's the reason why I have this love and hate relationship with my own city. There's parts of it that I love, and there's parts of it that I want to change and don't like, right? So how do I shine a light on this aspect of generosity and warmth that is there? It's a little ray of light in this darkness. And so it was important for me to show this one character who is genuinely a nice person and like a family member, and treats this child with respect and dignity and love in a genuine way. So that's also important to show.
Very, very much so. Now, leading up to the scene toward the end, so Myra knocks on the door. Her father answers, and her younger sister is there. And and from that scene forward, um, it's it's a very, very tough set of scenes not only to watch because your story. See, I love your storytelling because you use the dialogue and the camera to tell the story, and you don't have to go beyond that to be graphic anyway. We know what's going on. But with Myra, when he came and answered the door, her words were, "What is she doing inside?"
Mm-hmm.
And and I found it, and then her dialogue was very heartbreaking because she said, uh, "I told you not to touch her. As long as I allow you to touch me, you keep your hands off of her." And I was just like, "What in the world? How does how does a girl that young just have the words to say in
Mm-hmm.
that instance?" And so that was very, very heartbreaking. But this is what I loved about your camera work. So the scene where Myra takes her shoes off and gets into bed, which was hard to watch because that scene, it hurts. It hurts to watch.
Mm-hmm.
She was also trying to protect her younger sister, but I loved your camera shot. So why did you shoot the scene low
Mm-hmm.
through under the bed to see just her legs and her taking the shoes off, where you didn't take the camera to show the top of the bed? Why did you decide to do it that way?
It's a great question. This moment was not in the script, and it is one of the hardest moments in the film. And so when I scout locations, I'm always open to what the spiritual meaning of the frame should be in relation to, not just the journey of the protagonist, but also in relation to her spiritual journey, and yearning. And so, how do I frame that? And so, when I saw this location, this specific bedroom, it was completely empty and devoid of furniture, right? And the moment I saw this bedroom, I went to the more, the opposite the door, just where, as soon as you open the door, you can see the bedroom. And so I walked across the room and I looked back at the door where Myra was going to come in. She was going to knock. We don't know who's behind the door, and she's going to knock and walk in. And I asked myself, what is the best way to serve this character? And I didn't want to show her face because this is one of the hardest decisions any child, no child should have to make this decision or sacrifice. So I didn't want to show her face. I didn't want to show her father's face. And so literally my camera was snuck under the bed. I said, this is the shot I'm going to do in my mind. I was going to I was going to it's hard for me to say this, but as a survivor myself, it's very hard to show the face of another survivor in that moment, right, where they are walking towards the perpetrator. So I didn't want to do that. So um, this is going to be the hardest walk this child makes, and so I focus your attention, the audience's attention, on that, and I want you, the audience, to do the hard work of understanding the gravity of this moment, and for not even wanting to be in that room, right? This is what that shot does. And in doing that, I want this to be seared in your memory and for you to remember that once you've seen these ending images, you will not be forgetting this journey anytime soon. And in whatever way I can remind you about Myra's journey and her sacrifice, and help you, maybe help someone else in their journey, um, that is the thought I wanted to leave with this shot. So it's very restrained. That's how I like to be in my storytelling. The camera work is very restrained, And I want you, the audience, to think about what is happening and why and where is this going. And boy, this is going to haunt you.
It does because, and those were the words that I was thinking, because just the motion and the movement of that scene needed no words to tell the audience what
Mhm.
was happening. And you took the words right out of my mouth because it was haunting. And I could imagine how difficult it was to film, because then you have, then there's the, if I remember correctly, there's the cutaway shot that goes to the younger sister who is outside playing and just playing with her two dolls, and one of the dolls is topless.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, and then from that shot, then you show the overhead shot of Myra under the covers, and you have just the lighting just circling enough upon her where everything around her is dark.
Mhm. Yeah. So, I leave it to you, to the audience, that is, to figure out the dynamic of that moment as to what happened to this younger sister as well. I ask more questions than I have answers for in the ending, and this is how I leave the film to you, for you to discover and to uncover as to what they might be telling, what story they might be telling.
Well, yeah,
So
because
I'm curious. I'm curious what you may have thought. For instance, because you picked up on all the subtext. So, as an audience yourself, I would be curious, like what you would have deciphered this moment to be as well.
well, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It was haunting. It was disturbing.
Hmm.
Um, And you said something earlier, because I agree with you. I pray that this film um, helps other people in a way to where to help them realize they are the victim. They they were not at fault at
Hmm.
all. Um, because even in the film, because of Myra's mother was sick, I looked at that area of the story that the father was using that as an excuse.
Hmm.
And even though it wasn't said, every scene, and when a film is done correctly, all the scenes connect together. And so I'm sitting here watching the film and I'm connecting the dots. And this is the type of film that needs to be shown at the United Nations.
I hope so. I mean, we're trying to get it on their radar for now.
You're already ahead of me. So yeah, because when I saw this film, because it's not just Pakistan, it's a global issue in many, many
Hmm.
cultures. Now, I'm going to ask you about the absolute ending shot. The
Hmm.
vultures circling in the sky around the balloons. Was it a metaphor for the danger that circles the innocent?
Absolutely. It's one of those things that I'm playing in the film, this idea of the predator and the prey, you know, uh, innocence and the loss of innocence as well. And when it came time to think about the ending, I always, I have a thing for symmetry. I love bookending my films, and so this symbol of the balloon that I use in the opening. I mean, to talk about the ending, I have to go to the opening, right? Because the opening shot of the film is this beautiful colored set of balloons going off into this deep blue sky, and Myra's watching them, and it's a warm feeling, it's a saturated palette, it's a warm feeling, and we think, oh, we're entering someone's dream, and it's nice, and it's beautiful. And then I bring the same balloons back at the end, but this time I didn't want them to feel innocent. I wanted to convey the sense of the loss of innocence. And so in Lahore, in my city, if you look up at the skies, you will always see hawks circling. We call them cheel. You know, the cheels are always circling the sky because we have all these open spaces where you have garbage or meat shops. And so you will see the cheels circling those spaces. And I found myself asking, like, how can I bottle this moment up with respect to the balloons? And so it really was, we had to cast the right hawks circling and entice them to come here and be part of the shot, because I really wanted this ending image to stay with you and for you to think about, what you just witnessed, and this idea of the loss of innocence as predators roam around the prey. That's what the shot is. And again, there are no words in the ending sequence. I leave you to, the weight of these moments to sink into you and for you to think about it.
And you did, and you did something that I love when it comes to short films. I love short films that are bookended. You have this beginning, you have this very end, because I love the fact that, because I love the way how a beginning can foreshadow the end, and even with a slight change like you did. So I love the technique of book ending, especially with short films. Now, how did you cast the young actress Inaya for this part, and how did you explain to her and her parents about the part she was going to play?
It's a great question. Isn't she awesome? She makes the film, and Anaya has never acted before. This is her very first film that she's acting in. And when I was casting in Lahore, it was, my producing partner who was handling all the auditions and sending them to me because I'm based here in New Jersey. So for many weeks, I was just getting in these tapes from Lahore, and I just wasn't finding the right girl, because what I was looking for somebody is, somebody with very natural body language. And the auditions that were getting sent to me were from our commercial industry, the advertising industry, which is really big in Pakistan. We don't have a big film industry, but we have a thriving commercial and ad industry. So all of the girls whose auditions I was watching, they were primed to behave a certain way when the camera was rolling, and they were smiling, wide, like really widely and so on, with heavy makeup. And so I said to my producing partner, I said, find me someone who's never acted before and ask them to do the auditions with no makeup. No makeup, not even eyeliner or lip gloss, nothing. And so Anaya's audition came in as the very last audition in that 2 month period. And when I saw it, I just knew it. This has to be the actress. And it was just a 2 minute audition, where an improv thing that I made her do, and she was amazing in it. And the thing is, the role was for a 15-year-old, but Anaya was only 10 years old. So my job as a writer director was to figure out, if I need to work with this younger actress, what all do I need to do? The first thing was change the script. So I rewrote the script overnight to take into account a much younger actress. And so the situations and the dialogue, kind of changed it to what her reality would be. And then phase two of the audition would be to audition the parents, because this is a difficult film, and they already knew going into the auditions what the story was going to be about. So having these conversations with the parents, giving them the script, I was very upfront. This is the story, this is the script. I want you to read it, to reflect about it, and then come back to me to talk again, and to also talk to your daughter about it if this is something she wants to do. And so Anaya's mom is also a psychologist, so I also let her mom, talk to the daughter and um, speak to her about this role. And Anaya came back with a resounding yes, because Anaya is one of three girls and she's middle class too. So she really understood what the story was about and trying to say. And what I was really surprised about was how informed our young girls are right now about sexual assault and sexual abuse, because they're getting educated in schools, they're getting their information on social media. They're very, very active in social media. And so they're very self aware and aware about the issues. And also, they understand how sexual abuse operates in digital spaces. So, the film is talking about the physical spaces in public and private spaces. But today's children, today's girls are especially attuned to what is happening in digital spaces. And so, Anaya came in with, a lot of lived experiences that could translate very well for the film. And it was with her approval and her parents' approval that we went ahead and did the film.
Wow. So has this film been therapy for you?
It really has, as I mentioned earlier, this film started from a place of anger. But what has happened is, in the journey of taking this film to festivals and sharing this film with audiences around the world, my heart and my trauma has found a way to heal. And I'm really grateful for this journey to all those audiences who have been part of this journey. And it's been therapeutic in other ways too, knowing that, at the end of screenings, I've had moments where actual survivors have come to me after the film screening, and they thank me for bringing this film to wherever it's played, because it is a story that they know of. It is a story that they may have been a part of, and through the telling of this story, um, they feel like they feel heard, they feel seen. And that has been part of the healing for me and many other survivors, watching this film.
So what would you like the audiences to take from the film after they see it?
Well, share this film with as many people as you can. Talk about the film, follow our journey. I want this film to be available to as many nonprofits, that are working on gender-based issues, gender-based violence issues. I want survivors to watch this film. I want young girls and their parents to watch this film and have honest conversations around sexual assault, because, as I said, it's happening everywhere around us, especially, you know in digital spaces where, girls, there's a lot of predators out there, and girls are finding that their photographs are being repurposed and deep fakes are propping up. So, parents should be aware of those issues and what those spaces are where these predators are roaming, and have these honest conversation with their children, not just girls, but also boys, because they're also victims too right now.
Yeah, very, very, very much so. So, what does it feel like to be Oscar qualified again?
Well, it's a special journey, and what's this meant is, many, many people have seen this film that I never thought was possible. So I am grateful for that journey.
Well, I can't wait to see where this film goes. And, ladies and gentlemen, Afia Nathaniel's short film "Don't Be Late, Myra" is set against the bustling streets of Lahore, and the film follows a 10-year-old Myra who, after missing her school van, is forced to walk home alone. Navigating harassment and menace on her way, Myra faces a quiet but escalating danger that exposes the vulnerabilities children endure in public spaces. With its urgent pacing and raw emotional undercurrent, Don't Be Late, Myra is both a survival thriller and, again, an unflinching commentary on the silence surrounding child harassment in Pakistan, but also in other places across the globe. Deeply personal in its origins, the film draws on Afia's own childhood experiences and her perspective as a survivor of assault. By transforming trauma into urgent art, she brings visibility to an issue often silenced by patriarchy, sparking essential conversations again about children's safety and the cultural taboos that endanger them. Now, Don't Be Late, Myra left me deeply disturbed and shaken. Children all over the world are enduring childhood harassment and abuse, and it shouldn't be that way. This is a film that should be shown again, as I said before, the United Nations because of its very powerful and emotional storytelling. Now, Afia's Afia Nathaniel, well, she knows how to tell a story with just the small nuances and subtleties that will have a profound effect on the audience, just like it did me. It's no wonder that her film is a multi-film festival award winner and is now in the running for the 98th Academy Awards. And I want to thank you so much for sharing this very powerful, this very emotional and moving film with me today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for being part of this journey too. Yeah.
You're very, very welcome. And again, ladies and gentlemen, whenever you get the chance to see Don't Be Late, Myra, and also Academy members, since you are the only way you can vote this year is by actually watching the films. Make sure when you enter the portal, watch Don't Be Late, Myra, and you will feel just like I do. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can catch all of the Bond on Cinema interviews at bondoncinema.com. Check out our Prime show, our YouTube channel, and yes, you can listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, Audible, and more. And remember, you'll either see me at the movies or from the red carpet.